Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lorena Villegas. I am the young adult librarian at Cypress Park Branch Library, and I'm here to welcome you to today's LA Made program, the 40th anniversary of Love and Rockets. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the National Endowment for the Humanities, our Library Foundation, and our behind-the-scenes staff for helping bring the LA Made programs to you virtually. LA Made focuses on the diverse landscape of Los Angeles, highlighting the immense artistic and performance talent that has developed in the course of the city's eclectic history. If you would like to see more of our amazing programs, please visit our online calendar at lapl.org/events. And for our LA Made programs, visit lapl.org/LAMade. Our website also has blog posts and video links that highlight the library's diverse resources and upcoming programs. We would also like to take this opportunity to recognize and acknowledge the Tongva First People of this land, honor their elders, past and present, as well as their descendants, who are citizens of these nations. For more information on which territory you may reside on, check out native/land.ca. And now for today's program, 40 Years of Love and Rockets. In 1982, when the first issue of Love and Rockets came out, Gilbert and Jaime, occasionally working with their brother Mario, were young, struggling, unknown cartoonists who were bucking the dominant comic book trend of costumed characters with intimate, complex, humane stories told in comics form. Now, in its 40th year of publication, Love and Rockets has appeared in a variety of formats over the years and continues to do so to this day. Moderating this session will be comedian Chris Estrada, co-creator and star of Hulu's new comedy series, This Fool. Viewers attending this free virtual program will have a chance to win a copy of Amor Y Cohetes. And now let's welcome Gilbert, Jaime, Mario, and Chris to our LA Made stage.
Yay.
Hey, how's it going?
All right.
Hey,
All here.
how you doing, Gilbert, Jaime, Mario? Thanks for being a part of this. It really means a lot to me, not only as a fan. As a fan, it's a huge deal to me. First, I just want to congratulate three of you on 40 years of Love and Rockets. The series continues to have a profound effect on so many people, but me, as well as myself, I gotta admit, since when I was first introduced to Love and Rockets, I was 16 at the time, and I was used to the world of DC and Marvel. I was 16, I was used to X-Men. And when I first came across Love and Rockets, my childhood friend, Efren Martinez, introduced me to Love and Rockets. He was 2 years older than me. And he was the guy that was introducing me to underground and indie comic books, trying to get me away from some of that superhero stuff. And I remember when I first read it, I was shocked. It was the first time I ever read a book where it was real people. It was real people having conversations, dealing with relationships, dealing with loss. Sure, there was action in there, but it was real scenarios with a dash of magical realism. And I'm gonna tell you this: when I was 16, it shocked me to the point where I didn't return to it till a year later. And what stayed in my mind that whole time was that what resonated and that I couldn't stop thinking about the book was that not only in stories of Palomar or Locas or some of the short stories that Mario contributed to the series, was that I kept thinking a lot of these characters are like my friends, my family, myself. And it was a year later, at the age of 17, that I returned, that I said, I need to give that a second chance, because it resonated in my mind for a whole year of like, it was a new style for storytelling the year prior, where I just didn't quite understand it. And then I returned a year later because I was so captivated by this world that you guys created respectfully in Locas and in Heartbreak Soup and Palomar, that I just kept thinking, nah, I need to go back to that. There's something there that I think I need to discover. And it really changed the world for me. I can't tell you guys enough how much it's done for me.
Great. I wish there was more like you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really something else. I also got to tell you guys, I'm a stand-up comedian, and I'm also a writer as well. And I created a show called This Fool that's on Hulu. And one of the things that really inspired me was you guys actually did an interview with the LA Times in 2019. And you guys said a phrase in that LA Times about, in regards to being approached about, have you ever worked towards adapting some of your work? And what you said was, the thing about a lot of depictions of Latinos in Hollywood is they do too much of the tortillas are warm. And I got to tell you guys, that became a mantra for the show that I co-created, which was, we cannot make the tortillas are warm TV. I'm not interested in that. And I always had that gut feeling, but I just never phrased it that way. And when I read that interview and I heard you guys phrase it like that, it changed it meant so much to me that I said, yes, I knew this is why, because I never got that from Love and Rockets. I never got that from Locas. I never got that from Heartbreak Soup. There was not the depictions of these characters felt real life to me, Yeah,
Well,
so that was beautiful.
the problem with that quote is that it's the tortillas are good when they're warm.
Yeah, yeah. They are, but I think what you guys said was that oftentimes you guys would get late to dinner and you would end up eating cold tortillas, so it wasn't a sentimental like moment.
It was good cold, yeah.
Yeah, and well, I would love to start at the beginning. I mean, this series is called LA Made, but I would like to start at the beginning and ask you, take it all the way back to Oxnard. And can you guys tell me what it was like growing up in Oxnard, California, which is, in about an hour and 20 minutes from Los Angeles. And it seems to play such a big role in your work to this day. I mean, especially in Jaime's stories, like Hoppers to me seems to be Oxnard. And even going to your work, Gilbert, in Marble Season and Julio's Day, I see remnants of Oxnard in there. So can you guys talk to me about,
I could just set you up with the way it was. We grew up in a mixed race kind of community in Oxnard, where there were surfers, Chicanos, blacks, Southern whites, because we were in a Navy town. And so we got all this input by all these people, and plus all the comic books we read and all this stuff, and movies and things like that. And it was a big mix-up. I was hanging out with weird people. Jaime was hanging out with actual Chicanos. Gilbert, I don't know where he was, but they were all hanging out with different kinds of people and stuff, and different situations and things. And I remember Gilbert, even when he was a teenager, he would come out with he goes, "Oh, comic book superheroes are dead, man. We were drunk at the time. We need to do comics that only people that we need to make stories that we want to read." Stuff like that, and it got going that way, as far as the talent, and then the drive to do it, because they were always doing the little homemade comics, just for themselves ever since little kids. And man, you practice that in about 10-15 years, man, you're going to get good. And that's what really happened. It's like, you look at, I got married, I moved out of the house, these guys were still doing stuff. I looked at that and I saw Jaime and Gilbert's work, and I just said, shh, and I threw it over my shoulder, because it's like, I'm never going to catch up. And, so I thought, hey, it's about time to get these guys out into the world,
Yeah, that's amazing. And do you guys visit Oxnard still? Does it still seem to play a big role in your life? Is
kind of disappointing, it's gone like every other town. They killed it years ago, and it's just, strip malls, and it's not like it used to be for me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
our younger brother moved our mama out of there to Ventura, so we visit a lot less there. I like to drive through it, but it's not the same. I don't know where everyone is, that I used to know.
Yeah.
Like that. But it like you said, it created my whole world and what I drew. It was kind of like draw what you know, because then you don't lie. And
absolutely.
So Oxnard was just this perfect little. It was home, and I made it my character's home. Just gave it a different name.
Yeah.
Growing up in Oxnard, it's agricultural town, it's a small town. We just lived our little lives. Mario was, he's older than us, so he was the one collecting comics. And you had to go across town, downtown, to like maybe 5 different stores to get the comics because the distribution was so bad. But the fun part was you got to go to all these different stores, all these different places. Because then there was no comic stores growing up. There was,
all newsstands.
Yeah, the newsstands, the prescription drug stores, they sold comics. And sometimes there was one prescription drug store that had comic books from, I guess, the 70s, and they were still there. And this is the 80s, and they're still there and stuff. So it was great. We'd just buy these old comics that, nobody bought because they were just sitting in the back,
Well, there's this belief I have. I was born and raised here in Los Angeles, but there's this belief I have that when people grow outside of a city and things aren't as readily available for you, if you really like something and you really love something, you work harder for it. You search it out in a way that's even harder. And to me, that's why it sounds silly to say, but it makes sense to me so much. And that you guys are from Oxnard. I mean, and at that time and place that there was, you guys were getting TV from LA into Oxnard, you guys were outside of the city. And then, Oxnard had a hardcore punk scene that's called Nardcore that that I'm a huge fan of. So to me, it's like, it all seemed, I hate to wax poetic, but it all seemed destined to be. You guys are the childs of Oxnard to me.
Well, yeah, we were, but we were naive enough to not notice the difference.
Yeah.
I mean, that I thought that's how hard everyone had to work.
Yeah.
So,
that makes sense.
That was just the way you lived life. I mean, you just had to do it. What
became Nardcore? It was actually us and our friends, and we just decided we liked the music and this and that, and we decided, well, nobody's going to do this for us, just like early punk rock, and nobody's going to else do it. Which is great about punk is you just say, okay, I'm going to practice guitar and I'm going to do it, because it was a lot easier to get into, or at least get started anyway. Then there came dealing with other musicians. That's another story, but
I want to go back to a little bit of the beginning. Mario, you're the oldest sibling, and I've read that you were, being the oldest, you were the first one to start reading comics and drawing. What were some of your earliest influences? And it seems like the love of drawing comics starts with you.
Well, it's all the obvious things like Superman and stuff. What was ever out on the stands, Hot Stuff, Archie, anything that moved that I liked the art too. I was such an art snob from the very beginning that I would only get comics that I liked the art in. A lot of them I was just like, and now I'm rebuying them again. But anyway, but yeah.
Now,
what's that?
Oh no, I was just gonna say. Now, were these comics that Jaime and Gilbert were seeing you read, and then you were passing it down to them?
Yeah. No, and because my mom liked comics. So she was happy to buy them for us just to keep her ass quiet, and busy. So we ended up with all these different comics, and she loved them too. She read them just when we did too. We just passed them around.
That's amazing. Yeah, that actually was my next thing I wanted to talk about. Is I wanted to highlight the importance of your mom, who actually collected comic books when she was a kid, and I read that she would have her collection around, or her old comic books, and that must have been incredibly influential and opened up a world to have your own mom reading comic books. And it must have, I guess it made it okay. right? It made it okay to read comic books.
We actually didn't see the comics she read because they were gone, from the 40s. But we heard about them, and we would see reproductions and fanzines and things like that. So it was really fascinating. So to us, they were urban legends, these old comic books from the old days, these superheroes we never heard of, but the art was beautiful in a lot of them. So we saw that. And Mom would copy from comics and copy panels and portraits from comics. And we were like fascinated, like, wow, that's a different world, because we were just getting into the Marvel. Marvel was just taking off around this time. So that comics just permeated in our lives.
Yeah. Was it a big deal to come across comic books that were not superhero comic books at that time, like Archie comic books? Must have been it seems like it was incredibly
you can see what influence that is, and especially on Emma's work,
It does not. Reading those comics was just like reading. We thought everybody read all the comics, Marvel's, DC, Harvey Comics, Archie. It was all except for romance, because we were boys. We didn't have a sister toward the end. Our last,
or the money to waste on them.
That's right. But we just read everything, but there was no prejudice against. Oh, I don't like. If we didn't like a certain kind of comic, it might have been the way it was drawn, or it was a boring Western because it was just not a good comic. But then there was good. Jack Kirby and those guys did Kid Colt and that kind of stuff, old Westerns, and those are pretty good. So it depended on what we learned. It depended on the writers and artists who were putting out the best comics. We learned.
Yeah. That's really, I just think that's really cool that your mom was so encouraging of you guys reading comic books. That was the same thing for me at a very early age. My mom didn't really, the closest thing that my mom could relate comic books to was those novelitas. If you guys remember those little Western comic books, that was something that my uncles would read. So that was the context in which my mom understood comic books. But at an early age, she would just kind of like, whatever keeps you off the streets. If you want to go read comic books, I'll take you to a shop. And so she was very encouraging in that way. She was just like, fine, if you like this, great. I mean, she was very encouraging in that way to like take me to comic book shops, on whenever new comic books came out. So it was really cool. I've always loved hearing that your mom read comic books. I think that's such a big deal. Yeah. Also, the first issue of Love and Rockets was self-published, so there's an inherent like do-it-yourself aspect to that. Like I said, over the years, I've read, and a lot of people know about your involvement in the Oxnard and Los Angeles punk scenes. How much did that punk DIY attitude have to motivate you guys to self-publish? Did the DIY aspects of punk rock have anything to do with motivating you to self-publish?
Oh yeah, it was at the right time, because we were ready to break out, and we didn't care by that time of if we failed or whatever. It was just we were just happy to do comics and do them our way. By that time we didn't care about that we had to move to New York to draw Spider-Man or something like that. We didn't want to do that anymore. We wanted to do our own characters. Stuff like
nice.
That. And the DIY thing was also, I don't know if we would have had that push, to want to do these comics our way and this and that, if it wasn't for the early punk rock scenes, because they were making music their way. We'd read interviews from intelligent people like X and the Clash and people like that saying, yeah, we're going to do it this way. We want to tell the story. We want that. So that kind of was like basically it made us a little snotty so we wouldn't back down, because we knew there was going to be people not into what we were doing. So we just said, we don't care. We're just going to do it. And we believed in ourselves pretty quickly there. So
that's really cool. Mario, what was it about Gilbert and Jaime's early work that really made you encourage them to self-publish?
Well, they're like I said, it had been a long time since I had seen their stuff. Jaime was doing life drawing. We both had the same life drawing teacher. He got a lot more out of it than I did, as you can tell, as far as drawing and style and stuff. What was the question again?
Oh, what was it about? Oh, no, it's okay. What was it about their work in particular?
No,
made
it
you
just
encourage
took,
them to
like,
self-publish?
within a couple of years, it had gone light years from very simplistic to
Mm-hmm.
very polished and, and close to the style he has now. And
Yeah.
then Gilbert looked at it and said, shit, now I gotta now I gotta step up.
Yeah.
And I was just throwing stuff against the wall. I had no filters. So so I didn't last long.
Yeah. But there seemed to be something about not just the artwork, but the type of stories you were telling, even in Love and Rockets 1. Even though Love and Rockets 1 still has that sci-fi, the early Love and Rockets has that kind of sci-fi element from, Bem to, the race stories with Maggie and whatnot. But there seems to be the way that you guys were telling those stories, you guys seem to be exploring the more human aspects of like sci-fi, and just it was very interesting to hear people in the sci-fi world talk about their relationships or or even Bem that had very little to no coherent language in it. I think there was such a subversive quality to it that I just thought nobody. If I look at my Love and Rockets 1, I'm like, nobody seemed to be doing that at the time. What was influencing you guys to tell those kind of stories at the time?
Well, on my side of it, Gilbert had already established he was already doing a story that he was going to stick in Love and Rockets. I didn't have anything to put in it when they asked me to do so many pages for it. And so I just threw my whole life into it. I threw the sci-fi elements, I threw the girl mechanic, just the funny stuff, a homeboy walking in the background, stuff like that. I just threw everything I had because I had no plan. The only plan I had was that Maggie was going to be a star. She was going to be the main focus, her and Hopi. So as it started to flesh out, I started to keep the stuff that interested me, like the relationships and the real life stuff going on. And so that's why the sci-fi started to back out of my comics, because I was more interested in the real lives going on.
It was such a relief to hear from readers to say that's what they liked the most. A lot of the readers, once it started being about the characters, especially Maggie and Hopi at first, and then when I came around with Palomar, it was always, our interest was always making the characters relatable. I mean, not necessarily good characters, but just relatable for the readers to come back and see what's up with them, but we got a lot of opposition of like, put too more rockets, man. I liked it when it was about rockets. Trouble is, you run out of stories about rockets and robots and superheroes, unless that's your thing. It wasn't our thing. We grew up liking it, but it wasn't our thing. Like, I like drawing superheroes and like drawing that stuff, but you ran out of stories. Whereas with the characterization and the relationships, that just kept moving for us.
Yeah. What about for you, Mario? You were at the time doing short stories within some of the early Love and Rockets magazines.
I was and I was trying to figure out, because Gilbert made the mistake of telling me, he goes, we're going to do stories that we want those people to read. We're going to do what we want to do. And so I did, and it wasn't always good. But like I said, I just threw shit against the wall and got, and made sure, and was happy that, that I was included and stuff.
Don't be too hard on yourself. Some of those short
I know. I go back to my stuff and I go, well, this is way better than I remember it, So I did okay on a lot of stuff, but not everything.
Now, in regards to your short stories, was it that you were mostly interested in telling short stories, or did you at the time, because of your adult life and time constraints, having maybe being married and having children at the time, is that the time? Did short stories did your time only allow you to do short stories, or were you interested in short stories?
I've always been interested in short stories. I would get library books, stacks of them of short stories and stuff. And I like doing, and I was very intrigued with how, like, say, old DC comics and stuff, could do a 6-page story about a lawyer who's a detective, and it would have beginning, middle, and end, and dialogue, and it'd give you a half hour to read, 6 pages, and I was and so I tried to do that, like I said, and I tried to write screwball comedy or whatever it was I was trying to do with politics thrown in and stuff. And my only drawback was these guys had characters that they loved. I hated all my characters. I wanted to make stories about everybody just having the worst time in their lives, because that's the kind of stories I wanted to tell. I didn't want to fall in love with a character that people were going to say, "Why did you kill Boba Fett off?" Well, I didn't like him, so whatever.
That's great. I love seeing people have a bad time. So
oh yeah, everybody said, "Oh, creativity. Oh gosh, it must be so nice for you." And I know these guys are sitting here, and I go, "Yeah, creativity is this for me." It's not like, aha, I have an idea.
Yeah, it's gut-wrenching. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Now that we're segueing from Oxnard, getting into Los Angeles, when did you guys start coming to Los Angeles as adults? And did it start specifically coming to LA for punk shows? And if so, do you remember some of those LA bands you came to see?
This is you guys,
I think
man.
it started more. Mario, you and Gilbert were going to rock concerts before punk.
Yeah. Was this kind of the glam era? Were you guys coming to see Bowie?
Oh yeah, it was a great time too, man. I got to see a lot of really good music.
I like to rub it in. My first concert was T-Rex.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, that is really, really amazing. So,
those days too, we actually got to see Iggy Pop with Ray Manzarek and a band, and they were at the Whiskey A Go-Go, and they did L.A. Woman. They tore through L.A. Woman. It was great.
Wow.
It was great.
This must have been Funhouse era.
So when we went to punk, the music wasn't that much different from the glam era. It's just more revved up and more angry, this and that. But it was similar music, especially from England. So we were there the whole time. Of course, the mid '70s it got slim, but and I went to a punk show. I guess what was the first one, Mario? Were the Ramones and the Runaways? I guess that's our first one.
Yeah, that was a good one.
And that just like blew my mind. So I go, okay, this is the stuff. I want more, And we got it. It was great.
Yeah, that's amazing.
They were lucky enough to go to a lot of shows in LA. I was married and had kids, so I stayed home a lot. But they would tell me what to listen to, and I would buy the stuff. So it was all good. But I felt so envious. I went to a few shows with these guys, and I have to admit they were some of the best things I'd ever seen. Back when all these bands were really hungry, like X and stuff like that. It was awesome.
Yeah,
good times, really great times for music.
Yeah, I gotta say, for me, I grew up listening to punk music, and it still holds a special place for me, and I still listen to it a lot. But when I was a late teen and I was already into punk, reading through Love and Rockets, and not just in Locas, but in some of your other short stories that Mario and Gilbert did or Jaime did, it was really cool to see like characters wearing a Germs t-shirt, wearing an X t-shirt, or seeing like graffiti from the Plugs, or seeing like I would see the most. Sometimes it was through Love and Rockets that I would look up bands. Like one time I saw like there was like a Weirdos song that you guys talked about, and in like a Love and Rockets issue, and just all the music that you referenced was really like it. What I really liked about it is it made me work. It made me go, who is this? Like, what are they talking about? Oh, X, Germs, Plug. Okay, I have to go listen to this. It really, Love and Rockets was great in that way, that it expanded my world to make me seek out some of the bands that you guys were listing.
Yeah, we put down what we knew. We listened to these bands. We put them down in the book, in the comment. I mean, we listened to all kinds of rock in the '70s, because that for me, the '70s was the decade of the rock band. You go from 1970 to '80, and there's a mountain of rock and roll bands that I love. Not just five. A bunch. There's so many I have to leave out on best of lists. So to end the '70s with the punk just moving and going, and that was perfect timing for us to be inspired by doing the comics, because we were ready.
Correct. this is something I've always wanted to ask you guys. I actually heard this from Alice Bagg. I heard her on a podcast. She's the singer of the Bags, for anyone that doesn't know. And the Bags were featured in the LA punk documentary, Decline of the Western Civilization, the first one. She talks about being at the Elks Hall Punk Massacre show.
We were there.
And that's what I was that's what I was getting to. So that's what I want. I didn't know if this was a rumor that you guys were there, if this I didn't know if she was mistaken. I said I always wanted to, because I read about that in this LA punk book that Brendan Mullen, and who was the owner of The Mask, and Mark Spitz, a music journalist, wrote a book on an oral history on LA punk called We Got the Neutron Bomb. And they have a small chapter on the Elks Lodge punk massacre. And, you know, when I heard Alice Bagg say on a podcast that the Hernandez brothers were there, it blew my mind. It just was amazing.
It blew our mind too. I hard with my friends to go drink, you know, between bands. I came back and there's cops running through the streets just thumping heads. And so I had no idea what was going on. Jaime was more in the thick of it, but I was just outside going, what the hell, you know? And it was unprovoked. Cops.
And yeah, I remember the Go-Go's had just finished, and I went to the bathroom and I walked out and go, where'd everybody go? Because everyone was being pushed out. And, but yeah, that was crazy. That was like, what the hell is going on? You know, there was
that's when punk rock was subversive.
And I remember I saw certain people getting their head bashed in and stuff like that. And it was just crazy.
It was unprovoked. All the shows looked like they were violent to average people because there was jumping around and, you know, all the hijinks, but it really wasn't violent in the truth. And once the cops started to, started bugging us about coming to shows and just, you know, harassing people, this and that. A lot of the punk kids got more, you know, aggressive, and it just. We had to find the Black Flag show by seeing the helicopter. You know, where's the club at the Black Flag's playing? And we just would see the police helicopters, and we go, there it is.
That's great.
That's
it's so cool to get
this.
Go
ahead. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just remember one of the biggest disappointments about the Elks Lodge show was that was the first time I was going to see a lot of the bands, like X and the Plugs and the Bags, and because it was like an all-star show, and I only got to see a few of them, you know.
Yeah, I'm reading from that night. The lineup was the Zeros from the Zeros from San Diego, you know, which a lot of people at the time called the Mexican Ramones, which I thought was always really cool.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, the Zeros, the early incarnation of the Go-Go's when they were playing more punk music from that Mask era, X, and the Alley Cats from Lomita, which I thought was really cool. Yeah, that must be, and X was supposed to perform as well. So just to hear that story, I heard it on the podcast, and it just, I mean, I knew you guys were coming to shows, and I knew you guys, like I had read over the years that you guys were coming into the city and to watch punk shows when you weren't seeing shows in Oxnard. Or maybe this predated Nardcore, but like to hear you guys being at this show, that's amazing to me to go. I remember when I heard, I said, "Man, did Jaime and Gilbert get their heads knocked in, or like?"
I would have ran. No.
It was just crazy. But you know, we're from Oxnard. I seen riots. You know.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
It was kind of like, oh my God, they're doing that here too.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Oh, also, what I want to talk about is you guys mentioned Black Flag. It seems like Raymond Pettibone and other punk artists at the time had an effect on you, because that front cover of the Love and Rockets seems to be an homage to that Black Flag Nervous Breakdown backside cover, right?
Sure. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you go after a show, you'd go outside and people would be handing out flyers. Well, I was happy to get a Black Flag one because, I don't know, it was like comics, you know. Oh, he's drawing it. you know, and you'd get one of those, or you'd get a Gary Panther or someone like that. And it was really cool, like comics and punk too. And I knew there was a connection, you know. And and so it was very inspiring and, you know, part of the DIY thing. Like, yeah, they're doing it. I want to do it.
Yeah,
and it was very colorful. It was very colorful too, because I mean, I like I said, I had to stay home, but Gilbert would come home and go, "Oh, Joan Jett was throwing up in front of the whiskey, and so was doing this, and Rick from Cheap Trick, he's over there in the corner, just kind of like standing like this, and just, you know, I hear these stories about all this, the different things that would happen, and those were the days when, like, when you came out of a punk show, the bands would be out there handing you flyers, like, like, come and see our show, and you could talk to them, you know, and stuff. So that was nice. Anyway,
that's really cool. You know what I thought was really interesting too is that, you know, because you guys are Chicanos, you guys are from Mexican Americans from Oxnard, which, you know, if for people who don't know, Oxnard, it still is a working class town. You know, it's a working class town with working class people. There's still a migrant community there. There's a lot of farmers. There's also, you know, they have gangs and whatnot. So, you know, Oxnard is definitely, it can be a very tough part of Ventura County for sure. But what I read was that before punk rock, there was some involvement in the lowrider scene out there.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
My high school buddies were a couple of guys were lowriders, but they were the mellow kind. You know, just stoned all the time and just cruising, and you know, so they're cool guys. But Jaime, you were more involved, right? Or do I don't?
Yeah, because the guys that I hung out with, you know, they wanted to go pretend they were badass and go cruising and mad dogging, you know, guys and stuff like that. And I was just like, don't do it, don't.
But, if you see pictures of Jaime with his buddies back then, they've got weapons, man.
Yeah, I believe it. I said,
well, that's what shocked me though. Back then, I was like, "Whoa, okay, whatever, man."
I believe it, because I remember I one time went to go meet Jaime and Gilbert at Skylight Books to get some books signed, and I saw Jaime with his little placazo right here with his cross and 3 dots, and I said, man, Jaime must have been in La Colonia somewhere, you know.
No, we were South Side, and Colonia was the meanest part, you know.
Okay,
But for some reason, South Side, Oxnard, Colonia had respect. You know, it was like a thing. Like we'll go get these guys, but these guys, you got to be careful. You know?
When I was
I'm talking about myself.
When I was in high school, Colonia was the heroin capital of the world.
Yeah,
it was so made it crazy. You know, when you have a lot of money and a lot of heavy, you know, nasty drugs like that, like heroin, you know,
of course,
it's gonna be crime. There's gonna be a lot of hotheads, a lot of crazy people, you know, and there was, you know.
Yeah.
We tried to fight it though.
Yeah, for especially for you, Jaime, I feel like it seems to have really had an impact in the way that, like, Hoppers as a world felt so flashed out, or where you saw the kind of Latino punk rockers, the Asian punk rockers. You also saw the cholos, like you saw Speedy Ortiz and some of his lowrider guys, and that's when it all makes sense, because you go, Jaime seems to have traversed through both worlds, where you knew the lowrider guys and you were part of the punk scene, because it's depicted so authentically in Locas. I had my older cousins were gang members, so to me, Speedy felt very familiar to me when I was reading that stuff.
Right.
It was really cool. So it's really cool just to see kind of the different, you know, seeing the way Oxnard played a role in all 3 of your storytelling, the way punk rock played a role, to the way even lowriding culture played a role. It's so across the board, which is, I think, what a lot of, like, Latinos in the U.S. are. You know, we kind of we come where a lot of us are the children of immigrants. So, you know, we gravitate towards different things. You know, sometimes it isn't our parents' music at first. Sometimes it's like for me, it was now that I'm older, I can respect my parents' music and I have a love for it, you know. But at first, I was like, I wanted to hear punk rock, or I wanted to hear something that was angry. But I also, like, I lived in a neighborhood that had like hip hop. I lived in a neighborhood that was half black, so like hip hop was playing all the time, you know. So I felt like I really saw that, especially in your covers. Like I would see in some of the Love and Rockets covers throughout the years, I would see depictions of different types of Latinos, whether through your characters or some of the characters that made up the worlds of Palomar, of Locas. It was really cool and interesting and inspiring to see.
Yeah, well, like we were saying earlier, you know, you draw what you know. So if I didn't exactly hang out with a bunch of cholos, I just knew the vibe, you know.
Yeah, you knew the vibe.
And I took advantage of putting in the comic because we realized that a lot of people in the world didn't know about Southern California, the real Southern California.
And they thought it was all tiny beach and stuff.
And so we kind of took advantage of that. Putting in
you guys really. You guys really tapped into a working class Southern California that I had never seen depicted, that I lived and that I've lived for most of my life. I mean, my mom was a janitor. You know, she just retired last year. My mom always, if she didn't work in factories, she was a janitor, and she didn't speak. My dad was a busboy at a restaurant. So this kind of working class world was like, I really got to say, seeing it in Love and Rockets was so validating to see, like, people with real jobs. You know, it wasn't.
You know, well, when we first started, Gilbert was a janitor. Jaime was a janitor. I was a janitor before I started being a carpenter. So we were all janitors. Yeah, man, we know the world. You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
When it's all you can get, you know what I mean? So I was so happy when these guys showed their talent, just took it off, and it was like, good. They don't have to sweep anymore. Because I was a lousy janitor. I don't know about these guys.
So funny. Mario, I want to talk to you about Mr. X. It seems like that was aside from Love and Rockets, it was in Mr. X that all three of you guys worked together on Mr. X.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like, we're going to make a bunch of money on some color comic. Somebody else was going to do this thing. We're going to make a whole bunch of money. But, well, like I said, I'm not a businessman, and so we got took. You know, I can't speak for these guys, but I you know, and I enjoyed doing the book. I thought it was fun doing the thing, but you know, there was a whole other vision of it up in Canada of what those guys wanted, and I don't know. Gilbert and Jaime turned it into what it is. I mean, I threw some stuff in there, but they made it into you know, because there was no women in the thing when they wanted us to do it. There was no women characters, all this stuff. And so Gilbert says, "Fuck, let's do this, man. Let's turn it around." And we stood it as long as we could. But you know, you don't get paid, and you don't get paid, and you just start going, "Okay, forget it." You know.
So this is early on, right?
This was early on. Like I said, we're just like, you know, and just trying to you know, get through it. You know, with our meager you know, things here, and because we were what do you call it? Linked with Gary Groth, that made it a little more difficult to get across to like mainstream readers, because there was that whole drama with that kind of thing. But otherwise, I don't know. The comic, as far as I'm concerned, the quality kept up and kept getting better. So,
and it was an amazing book. Yeah, it was really cool to, in the last few days, to revisit some. I have some issues, so it was really cool to just see you guys. To see you guys work outside of Love and Rockets together was a really cool thing to see. One thing I wanted to talk about is there's this in entertainment and media, people are talking about representation more than ever, but I think you guys were at the forefront of it, and you, at least in my experience, you guys were at the forefront of representation. But there was something about your representation in terms of seeing Latino characters and other ethnicities that you guys represented in your books and drew. It didn't feel like you guys were, how do I put this? It didn't feel like you were doing it for the sake of representation. I could be wrong. It just felt almost like you were just unconsciously representing your world. Was it intentional? Were you guys, or was it more like we're just doing what feels natural to us?
I think it's a lot of that. Because draw what you know, and I thought this stuff was worth telling because it wasn't seen by most people. But also it was stick it to the middle, the people who don't believe this stuff, who don't support all this diversity and stuff like that. It was kind of that too, right?
Well, man, after 40 years, I feel like you guys definitely proved your point and won. I mean, you're seeing Marvel and DC trying to catch up to what you guys were doing in 82, 83, 84 up until now. Like, it's one of those things where I think in the last few years, it seems like Marvel and DC are trying to do that now. And I'm like, well, that's great, but I still think to myself, the Hernandez bros were doing that in the 80s. Yeah.
Keep saying that because a lot of them have forgotten.
No, I think it's definitely worth remembering. I really like to talk about it. Yeah. It was such an amazing thing. After 40 years of Love and Rockets, the thing that's amazing to me is that it's 40 years. So that means because you guys are writing in real time or in real time within the universe of Locas and Luba and Fritz and some of the, the characters that are first originated in Heartbreak Soup and Palomar, those characters also aged. Like, what was the decision to make characters age?
Bethel.
Me, I just
Gasoline Alley, dude.
I'll just go there. Mario was sort of a historian of old comic strips. He would get books on the history of comics and this and that. And here again, just another world I never knew of these comic strips. And they were 1920, 1925. I'm like, whoa. And there was this one strip, Gasoline Alley, that I really gravitated toward reading about it. And it turns out it started out with a comedy, strip about a gas station, and and I don't know what inspired the creator, but the main character Wally, he comes at his door as a foundling child, a baby, and then he picks up the baby, and then he goes and somehow he ends up with the baby. And I don't know why he names him Skeezix. I don't know why he did. But anyway, and I saw in a gallery showing of a wall of original Gasoline Alleys, and it showed the progression of Skeezix getting older, right? It showed the baby as a toddler, as a little boy, as an adolescent, as a teenager, and then in one of the collections that Mario had of history of comics, had the character Skeezix, and he's complaining that he's turning 40 years old. And I just kaboom! Oh, there goes my glasses. It was like kaboom. I just thought that's awesome. I mean, because the main thing is that he earned it. He had Skeezix's adventures from 1930 or whatever it was till the 60s. He did those things. It's not like flashbacks or he jumps 5 years into the future or anything. He played it every day, and that impressed me. I thought, well, maybe it was naive or what, but I thought, well, if he's doing it, it must be good. It must be. This is what the challenge is, to make a good comic. Now, naturally, I wasn't going to write the same thing. I wanted to write my own thing, but I used that as a model for me, anyway. Jaime ages his characters, but I was focused on it, that I would have the stories progress. Naturally, they move too fast. Now they're too. I wish I slowed down a little bit with the aging, but but Jaime did
that Gasoline Alley have that same effect on you, that it made you want to age your characters as well?
Yeah, that and I just remember just thinking about well, my characters must have had a past, like when like my character Maggie when she was a teenager and stuff like that. So the more I thought about that stuff, and I'm sure Gilbert did too, was that you thought, wow, if you tell old stories, you get to tell stories of that your mom told you, you know, when you were growing up, that your grandma told you, that your aunts and stuff, and I liked the character Maggie more the more I knew about her, the more I knew about where she came from and what came before her and stuff like that. And that was really encouraging. And so I just thought, wow, that helps make a really good rounded character using the past. You know, superheroes are the same age every time, you know, unless they feel like doing the old Wolverine story, you know, but that's like in a different universe or something. But it just seemed very a powerful storytelling device to have the characters that you knew them when they were born too, as well, you know.
Yeah, you guys have definitely done some amazing work with aging the characters. I mean, it really, to seeing where Fritz is and Luba, and seeing where Maggie and Hopi and Ray are now in their, you know, at their, it's just amazing to watch. And I'm excited every time I pick up an issue.
It's sad. I think it's really interesting because I have more Ray fans now that say he's sexy when he's old. Like, wow,
cool.
I didn't expect
that's cool. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
So,
well,
you know, it
you know,
helps.
let me ask you guys, the thing that people talk when they talk about you guys, the thing they bring up in both of all three of you, in Mario's short stories, in Gilbert your stories, and Jaime with Locas, they bring up magical realism. Now, your magical realism, it feels, how much of that is, were you taking in magical realism literature, or how much of that, because to me it always felt like these stories were coming, they felt cultural, they felt like stories you would hear from your mom, or like the same kind of stories I heard. My mom's from Mexico, she's from Zacatecas, Mexico, so I would hear the ghost stories, I would hear stories about the devil, you know. So how much of that, so it doesn't seem like magical realism literature was playing a role. This was all coming from, you know, stories from your mom and your aunts and maybe grandmothers from Mexico and everything.
Aunts. Yeah, they would tell us stories that, you know, we just gather around. They would just tell us, you know, 20 minutes of a story that usually it happened to them or somebody that lived in their town or something. You know, not all the stories were crazy ghost stories. They were just mysterious ghost stories. And that's what made it. They're more down to earth. Like a lady walking through town, you know, and only, you know, certain people would see her. They could hear her heels. But, you know, she would disappear into the night. And things like that was so fast. And they would just tell us those stories as that's what happened. You know, so we never developed a, no, you're lying. You know, we never felt that. We thought, real or not, that's a damn good story. And we kept thinking, that's a good story.
And they would tell us those stories in the middle of telling us about, when I went to school, I had this friend, blah, blah, blah. And so it was kind of like, so this is everyday stuff. These ghosts are just part of your everyday experience. And I kind of really like that part.
Yeah, I really like that. I just remember when reading Love and Rockets, whether it was, you know, stories being told in Palomar or stories being told in Locas or your short stories, Mario, that I felt like people were bringing up magical realism and, you know, comparing you guys to writers like magical realist novelists. But I just kept thinking, this feels like this is coming from stories that our parents and our aunts and uncles share with us, you know, or our grandparents. So like you know, it felt like that. So I always that's something I was wondering. I was like, is this literature they're taking in, or was this just stories from their families?
We just didn't want to, a lot of it is we didn't want to lose that stuff. That's what a lot of stuff that's informed in Love and Rockets is. We didn't want to lose the stories. We didn't want to lose that we had our best friend in the second grade, that we knew people, different kind of people, different cultures, that all that was real to us, and that was about us growing up, and it was good to us, good for us. But it wasn't playing on TV or movies or wherever. You know, you might read it in a novel, but a novel is safe. it's just words. It's words into your brain. That's it.
Yeah.
Where you have to see people in a movie or comics or TV or a play or something, you know. And of course that existed, but it wasn't on the level that we liked it. Just down home,
Yes.
you know, just, you know, how we
Yeah.
grew up with it,
Yeah.
you know. I like warm
Yeah.
tortilla.
No. I
have to take that.
look. I'm always gonna eat a warm tortilla. But what made me laugh about that comment is that you guys said, you know, you guys, they play it up like we all eat food together or dinner all the time, and it's not like that. It's like some of us get home late. Some of us are being yelled at to come to dinner. That's what I took from it. Is that I think you know. I think when it comes to Hollywood, when they want to represent Latinos, they represent us as noble peasants.
Yeah.
Where they go.
Here we go. Yeah.
And it's also
and that we're always celebrating us.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're
always like we're Latinos. We're always like dancing in our houses or something.
Yeah.
Like, here we are. No, I'm hiding from mom in the closet. She's gonna
and how come? Yeah, and how come we're all just about death? You know, the book of life, the book of death, this of death. You know, I mean, I love it. I love all this stuff. But geez, isn't there any other? That's why I like that other cartoon. I can't remember the name of it now.
Well, that's why it was so influential for me to read that interview, because the way you guys said it's like we're not all eating dinner together at the same time. Some of us are being yelled at to come home. Some of us have jobs and we get home late, and by the time we get home to the food, it's cold. So to me, what I loved about that was just that it represented what real families are like. And like I said, I really have this thing where they like to represent us as noble peasants. And when you guys,
noble savages, I call that too.
Yeah,
they do it with blacks, they do it with Mexicans. Yeah, on all these things.
Yeah. So real quick, I have two more questions, and I just want to talk about Mario. You returned back to comics with Citizen Rex in 2009 with you and Gilbert, and I really enjoyed that miniseries. What brought you back? What brought you back in 2009?
Gosh, I don't remember. I remember
that was me between books at Dark Horse, because I like working with Dark Horse as well. It's Fantagraphics and DC in it, and because I could do my own comics. But I remember I just burned out on the last project. I mean, because I have to do Love and Rockets and then I do the side comics. Well, sometimes, you know, that can just burn you out. You know, even just doing Love and Rockets can burn you out. But I was doing these extra comics, and I just had a window, and I thought Mario has really good ideas. He had good ideas he never got to use, like say in Mr. X, because we stopped doing it because we didn't like the publisher. So, but Mario still had ideas for it. So I asked him if he had anything, you know, of anything, not even Mr. X, just anything. And you just dug up something, and we thought, let's go for it. You know, let's just have a new book. It's just to have a new book. And, you know, me and Mario working together, and, you know, that I had room, you know, time.
And it's as simple as, so what do you not want to draw? He's like, I don't want to draw buildings. I don't want to draw cars. I don't want to draw this, that. Science fiction. All right.
You can make up
the easier that way.
That's the cool thing about drawing space cars, because that's like drawing the woods. Like, you don't have to draw a tree at the right exact anatomy. You do, you know, the desert, you can just draw a straight flat line. You don't have to draw real cars or something. Draw a space car. Oh, good, I get to just draw it. Oh, that looks wrong. It's in space. You don't know, you know.
Yeah.
Man, the one thing I want to tell you guys is probably cut it short. So we'll cut it here after this question so we can go to Q&A from the audience. But after 40 years and these characters have aged, do you love these characters and how they've aged? Like, you know, some of these characters, they're so different from where they started. Do you feel like you're still making decisions for them, or are they making their own life decisions? Is Fritz still are you making decisions for Fritz, or is Fritz still making her decisions? And Jaime, for you, does it feel that way with Maggie, Hopi, and Ray? Are they making their own decisions, or does it feel like you're still deciding for them? And with all that said, do you guys love these characters? Is it okay to not like them? Is it where they're at?
Well, with certain characters, even if you love to draw them and write them, we'll still put things in their personalities we don't like, or at least I do. Like I don't like when this person's like this, or I don't like you mentioned Luba and Fritz, who are half sisters, and both those characters write themselves. They kick my butt when I try to change them, when I try to make them more communicative, just trying to corral them. So Luba's retired now. I just have her as a retiree, and Fritz should be retired, but she's a strange person. She has this weird competitive edge that she needs to be out there and needs to be seen. It's just a part of her personality, and sometimes in real life that's unpleasant. So sometimes she's an unpleasant character to me, but I love to do the stories. So you're asking about loving the characters, and not necessarily that. It's loving to do their story. And I like the way to draw it and all that, but it's mostly about their story. And sometimes it goes in places like I wouldn't go there, but it's a story. It's a different personality. So so those two characters for me are actually difficult characters, but I love doing them, or used to doing the story.
Yeah. What about you, Jaime?
Yeah. Well, Maggie is easier than all the other characters to write. She writes herself, but like say Hopi, the last 10 years, me and Hopi had a big fight because she was changing. She was actually changing, and I was like, you're not going anywhere. And she'd go, yes, I am. It's like, and we'd have these like arguments kind of things. And it took me a long time to like her again. And it was, but it was because I was treating her like a real person, more than a piece of paper,
Well, she's made such a big change from being the craziest punk rocker to being a teacher now, and being a mother.
And I found it really interesting that she was, of all my characters, she's the one who's changed the most, when I expected her to never change. So they surprised me all the time.
Sorry, I will say, I've said this before. I will say that the character that has the most impact in cultural, in media and movies, I should say, movies, TV, whatever, is the Hopi character. Because you go trace her history, there was never a Hopi character before, ever. Yeah. She came out, Jaime got her right, she did it, and now there's just complete copies of her constantly, like you said, in the new Marvel and DC comics, the X-Men movies, the TV shows, the streaming shows. They all have the sassy girl, punk girl, leather jacket or army jacket, and it says all this stuff, and everybody just kind of lets it go because that's her personality. That character did not exist before that in pop culture, and so I give full credit for getting it right. And people understanding it.
And I owe most of it to LA punk girls in the late 70s.
That's right.
That's what the attitude was, and it was like, oh, I didn't know they weren't supposed to act like this in society. But cool.
Absolutely. Well, the one thing I want to say before we go into Q&A from the audience is I want to thank you guys. Your work had a profound effect on me, so much so that there's a lot of references in my show to Love and Rockets. When I was naming some of these characters, I was literally the show is based on loosely based on my own life and some of my stand-up comedy. But when I was naming some of these characters, I looked over and I flipped through my Love and Rockets, and I named, the main protagonist, who I play, named Julio, based off of Julio's Day. I got, I remember looking over to my copy of Julio's Day and saying, his name is gonna be Julio. And then when the Maggie character and my the woman who plays my ex-girlfriend in the show, she's based off of one of my ex-girlfriends who is a punk rocker, and I looked over and I said, I'm gonna name her Maggie. So even the mom, the woman who plays my mom in the show, her name is Esperanza, and that's based off of Hopi's real name. And and the one thing I love correcting everyone on this, I wear a Love and Rockets T-shirt. It's the Jaime cover from, I think, was it issue 24 or 27, where the band is playing. A lot of people think it's Love and Rockets, the band, and I take great pride in correcting them and letting them know that it's not the band. It is it is the comic book, and that they need to read the comic book. I take great pride in that. Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, the show, and it's terrific. It's good.
Oh, thank you so much. That really means a lot. Thank you, guys. So we'll go ahead and jump to some Q&A from some questions from some of the audience watching live.
Okay.
All right, great questions, Chris. Here's another question from the audience. What are you guys reading and digging right now?
That's always the hardest question, because mostly I just mostly read reprint stuff, and I read Saga whenever it comes out. Trying to think of who else is new, but I don't read much new stuff. Just like mostly reprint.
I guess it's the question is comics we're reading. Is that?
Or digging? I mean, maybe shows or series.
Oh, right. Well, there's a great show called This Fool, but other than that,
thank you.
I don't do a lot of reading comics because I'm working on comics all the time in my waking hours, except for relaxing at night after dinner and all that. I'm just always writing and working, so I'm not really keeping up with comics right now. So I have to be shown what the cool comics are, or who's the new star or whatever. Sideways, Jaime?
Yeah, where'd you go, Jaime?
He's frozen.
He went sideways. Oh well, belly up.
All right, our next question from Victoria Brennan. Are there any artists, alive or dead, that you would have loved to collaborate with? Or I'd love to see something with Rick Geary, Wally Wood, for artists who have passed.
Boy.
Wallace Wood sounds good to me. Shoot, man. Yeah, let these guys draw my stuff.
Well, Wally Wood, especially for your stories, that they're so dense with detail in the art and the story, where they are, the placement and all that. Wally Wood would have been great for you, man. Because he didn't care. He would put that detail in. He would put in what you put in.
He's a hardworking dude.
Yeah, great artist.
All right, let's see. Next question from Michael Nordstrom. Gilbert, I wonder if that T-Rex show you saw was the same one D. Boone and Mike Watt went to as kids. That was Watt's first concert experience.
Well, I don't. It was 1973.
It was at the Santa Monica Civic.
And it was the Tank tour. Nobody remembers Tanks. That was the album after the Slider. And anyway, we went to that tour. It was 73, Santa Monica Civic, and it just blew my mind. The T-Rex is already my favorite band, and how many people are lucky enough to go see their favorite band in their prime, And luckily Mario took me, and it was terrific.
Another question from Michael Avolio. Question for Jaime. What prompted you to return to sci-fi in recent years with the Princess Animus story?
Oh no. No.
Oh no, he's gone. Darn.
We're having some technical difficulties with Jaime. We can't hear him.
Well, I can speak. Jaime said that he was he wanted to do something that he could do anything with. You're very constricted when you're doing a Maggie story and a Ray and stuff like that. But he wanted to do something that was just off the wall and where he couldn't be constricted. He could do whatever the hell he wanted with it. And that's what he told me.
And it's back to the
the space car he's talking about. If you're doing a space car, there's no wrong way to do it.
Right. He just wanted to break, and what he told me, and that wanted to just draw spaceships again and people flying around and all kinds of aliens, and once in a while you want to draw that. But I'm surprised how long he's been doing it. I guess he's really focused on making it a graphic collection, So if he ever comes back, there he is sideways, and I don't know.
Should we do one more question?
Yep.
All right, one more question from Jonas Madden Connor. What are some of your favorite LNR stories you've done over the years?
Can you hear us, Jaime? Nope, he's still working on it. Okay. Well, I'll say my little bit. Probably the first Palomar story for me, because it was new to me too. The characters were new and everything, and I think I handled it okay. But it's still, to me, an unfinished story, and that's why Palomar lasted so long. It was just so it'd probably be my favorite of my own work that's coming out of my head right now would be the first Palomar story. There's probably others, but I can't think of them right now. I've done so many. Can you hear Jaime?
You there yet, bro? Looks like a mafia don.
Yeah.
Hey, so,
All right. Well, we'll take the cue from Jaime. It's unfortunate that we lost him, but I think we can wrap up the show now. Let's see. Thank you, Chris, and thank you guys for having stayed, over our hour time lot and answering such great questions. We hope you enjoyed the program as much as we did. And remember to check out the new Love and Rockets documentary on October 5th at 9 p.m. on KCET. For more upcoming library programs, check out the library's online calendar at lapl.org/events for upcoming LA Made programs, including our next one on Thursday, October 6th at 4 p.m., where we welcome USC professor and MacArthur Fellow Dr. Natalia Molina, who will be discussing her latest book, A Place at the Nayarit. The Nayarit was a local landmark popular with both Hollywood stars and restaurant workers from across the city, but it was much more than a popular eating spot. It was an urban anchor and a gathering place where ethnic Mexican workers and customers connected with their patria chica, their small country. Helping moderate this discussion will be LA Times columnist Fidel Martinez. Viewers attending this free virtual program will have a chance to win a copy of A Place at the Nayarit. Until next time, we truly appreciate all your support. The success of LA Made and all of our library programs could not happen without viewers like you. So thank you and gracias.